All right, we'll get started. I hope everyone is well. I would like to welcome you to our quick 30-minute webinar. My name is Phil Corbin, Director of Sales and Marketing here at Variphy. I'm joined here today with Dan Schmidt and Victor Verba, our superstar systems engineers. And in today's webinar, we're going to cover Cisco CDR reporting, more specifically, how you can easily build capacity utilization reports for device pools, operators, beyond gateways, so outside gateway info. All right. We're going to start off with a quick overview of Variphy, what we do. We're going to jump into a live demo, show you an in-depth view of our CDR reporting, capacity utilization reports. We'll pause for Q&A, get some of your questions answered. During the demo, if you have any questions, make sure to ask them in the Q&A panel at the bottom right of the screen. After Q&A, we are going to reward one lucky attendee with a $50 Amazon gift card, so hang around to see what you may have won. Variphy is the preferred analytics and management solution for Cisco collaboration. We provide industry-leading CDR reporting and analytics, customizable dashboards and widgets, CCX reporting and wallboards, remote phone control, change management. But today, we are focusing on CDR-specific capacity utilization reporting. So if you have any other questions on any other of our other features, we can most definitely take them offline, get those answered. We have a lot to cover today, so we have Vic here, also known as CDR Jesus, here to show us the way.
All right, thank you, Phil.
Pass you the ball.
Sounds great. And let me go ahead and bring up my screen. Hey, thank you everybody for attending. Excuse me. The purpose of today's session is we're going to cover a little bit about capacity utilization. In our previous webinar, we had covered capacity utilization as it relates to gateways. Specifically, am I over trunked, under trunked, am I reaching capacity and things of that nature? And we built a lot of these widgets in that reporting. If you were unable to attend the previous webinar, I urge you to navigate over to variphy.com and you can go over to our webinar section. Down towards the bottom, you're going to be able to see previous webinars, and you can go ahead and watch our previous webinar regarding capacity utilization reporting, and it walks you through some just very quick, simple widgets and reports, much like what we're looking at here. So to get started, what we're going to do is we're going to go a little bit beyond what we talked about the previous session. So we're going to go ahead and look at how I can use capacity utilization to monitor not only my gateways, but who's utilizing those gateways. Because when you're talking about capacity utilization, it's nice to know, where a capacity is being utilized or what gateways are being utilized, but it's also nice to know who's actually utilizing that. So when you're talking about migrating to SIP or having to add more PRIs or rearrange PRIs, it's important to not only see how those PRIs and those SIP gateways are being utilized now, but also understand who's utilizing them. So perhaps maybe we don't need a new PRI. Maybe we just need to migrate some existing sites or some existing locations to a SIP gateway and free up some resources for an existing location. So today, we're going to go ahead and take a little bit deeper dive and show you how to look at capacity utilization beyond just looking at your gateways. So to start, what I'm going to do is I'm going to pop over to our reporting section. Most of these webinars, if you've attended with me, a lot of the things that I do, I build right off of this history search screen. But for today's demonstration, we're going to pop right into the report section, and we're going to go ahead and build some capacity utilization reports. The first thing I'm going to go ahead and walk you through is how to build a capacity utilization reports to monitor your locations. Everybody's got remote locations here or there, and we're going to use device pools to be able to help determine, hey, which of those locations that I have off of this SIP gateway or these PRIs or these H323 gateways are utilizing the most channels. Maybe I need to get them their own PRI, or maybe I need them to move over to a SIP channel. So that's what we're going to go ahead and build out first. First thing I went ahead and did is I navigated over to reports, and I'm going to go ahead and just click create new report. We're going to call this cap utilization device pools. So in this example, what we're going to do is we're going to bring in all of our calls. So the first thing we're going to do is we want to be able to focus in on our gateways because we don't necessarily want to see the internal calls. Those aren't using channels on our gateways. So we're going to focus in on all of our gateways. So I'll just call this SIP gateways. There's a lot of different ways that we can do this. We talked a little bit about that in our previous webinar. We're going to use some of that same information. For this particular demonstration, we're just going to use the device type. So the nice thing about Variphy is that we have that connection into your call manager. So we know what types of gateways you have, what types of devices that you're utilizing. So by just choosing something as simple as device type, it's going to allow me to bring in all of my SIP gateways. I don't have to go ahead and get specific and add individual gateways or individual PRIs or anything of that nature. If I did have some PRIs, or some T1s, I can actually just say, hey, you know what, I want to see my MGCP T1s, or maybe I have a series of H323s. I want to be able to see all my H323 gateways. It's as simple as being able to just add those in there to be able to bring back calls for all of those. So right there, what I'm doing is I'm setting my search. I'm saying, hey, bring me back all calls that are going over these types of devices. So very simple. So the next thing I'm going to go ahead and do is I'm going to navigate over to my search set statistics. So because I'm building a capacity utilization report, it's not super important to me to be able to see, total average durations, total call durations, and, abandoned call ratios and things of that nature. I can add those in there if I want, but for the purpose of this report, it's really capacity and who's using all my channels. So for that, I'm just going to go ahead and turn off some of those search set statistics because that's just information I don't necessarily need. But what I am going to do is I'm going to go ahead and flip this guy on right here. What this guy is going to do is it's going to go ahead and say, hey, out of my search, in other words, all my SIP gateways, my T1s, my H323s, what I want to be able to see is concurrent call activity. I want to see how many channels are being used. So what we're doing with this one is we're actually building a very high-level report that's going to show me capacity over all my gateways, but we're also going to dig into it and show that capacity and how it's being used amongst your locations. It's very simple to do within the Variphy application because, again, we're reading this information directly from your call manager. So what I did is I just turned off my search set summary because just stats I don't need in this report, and I enabled cradle to grave. If I wanted to see some charts and things of that nature, I could go ahead and turn those on as well. In this particular instance, I'm going to turn those off because we'll take a look at that when we look at dashboards in a moment. So the next thing I'm going to go ahead and do is now that I'm bringing back all of my calls with my search, I want to be able to define how I want to see those. And in my case, I want to break those down by my locations, and my locations are defined by using my device pools. So what I'm going to do in my case is I'm going to go ahead and enable what's called data grouping. Data grouping is a secondary layer of summary. Basically, what I'm doing is I'm providing a first layer of summary, which is all of my gateways. And then I'm going to go ahead and say, I want to see a secondary layer summary, not just capacity at my gateways, but also capacity at my device pools. So in this case, I'm going to go ahead and pick the go ahead and do. Now, the next thing I'm going to do is much like I did in my search set statistics, I'm going to go ahead and turn off summary here because, you know what, I'm, again, not super concerned with the average duration at each one of my device pools or total call duration or abandoned calls and things of that nature. I'm going to go ahead and turn those off in this example because we're going to create a simple report that's going to show capacity and show who's utilizing that capacity. But the next thing I'm going to go ahead and do, much like I did in the search set, is I need to turn on that utilization. So I'm going to come down here and I'm going to check mark a couple of these guys. So what this is doing is it's going ahead and it's giving me capacity utilization at my SIP gateways. And now I'm going to go ahead and show capacity utilization at all of my device pools. So by turning those on and utilizing grouping, I'm going to break down the gateway and I'm going to break down every device pool within my system. Now, I'm going to give you a little bit of a warning. I don't have a whole ton of device pools in my system, but this is going to give you a good idea, and we're going to delve into that a little bit more in different ways to be able to break this information down. So now I'm going to go ahead and give this guy a save. Let's pop this guy in here, and there's our report. So from here, I'm just going to go ahead and run it. And I'm going to go ahead and choose the PDF format. I'm going to select my search time window. So in my search time window, I'm doing the current and previous week because that's what I have data for. Now, one thing to keep in mind when you are doing capacity utilization, it's a good idea, especially when you're looking at device pools and there's certain hours and things of that nature, to be able to look at that from the business hour time frame. Because one of the things we're going to do is we're going to break down some time percentages in our activity tables. We're going to say what percentage of time you're utilizing X number of channels. Now, if my office is only open for 12 hours a day and I spend that time and I run my report for 24 hours, well, that percentage of time window is going to be a little bit wrong. So it's very important to go ahead and try to get your hours in here. So next thing we're going to do is we're just going to give this guy a quick run. So what this is doing right now in the background is it's bringing back all calls to or from my gateways. Remember, I chose the SIP gateways. I've chose the H323s, T1s. So it's basically telling me how many calls I have going on at once amongst all of those gateways. So I can see that I peak at 15 channels being used against all of my SIP gateways, T1s, H323s in this particular case. I can see that peak duration lasted for only about 5 seconds. So if I've got 25 or 500 channels on these across all these gateways, well, I'm only using at most 15 in the last 2 weeks. And you could always open this up for a month or 2 months or specific dates and see a much broader range. Now, on average, I'm using about 2.3% or 2.3 channels. So out of the whole previous and current week, I'm using my average channel usage is about 2.3. All right. The next thing that we're looking at down here is our total concurrent call activity table. So, and this is where I was talking about that time window percentage. So that's where it's important to be able to get your times in here, because essentially what we're saying is I have no calls going on about 32% of the time. So throughout my business hours for the previous 2 weeks, I've got about 32 or 33% of that time window I have no calls going on. About 12% of the time I have one call going on. Again, about 12%, almost 13% of the time, I have 2 calls going on. So what we're doing is we're not only showing you what's going on amongst all of my search being my PRIs, my T1s, my SIP gateways, I'm also telling you how much of that utilization you actually have going on and how often it's going on. Now, what I wanted to show, and the nice thing about this report is if I scroll down a little bit, and like I said, I prefaced, I don't have a whole lot of device pools, but just by adding the device pool grouping option in this report, what I've done is I've taken things outside of just my gateways, and I'm showing you all of the device pools I have in my system and how they're actually utilizing that much utilization or that many channels. So I could see that my main device pool, which is really the only one I have, the average stream utilization is about 2.32 calls. At peak, it was 14. So I have some devices in here that are unassigned. My peak utilization time was about 28 seconds for my main device pool, and I'm just giving you a total number of calls. Total number of calls is not super important in this particular case because the volume and the utilization at your gateways is not necessarily total number of calls, it's how many calls are going on at once, and that's defining how many channels. So within your environment, keep in mind, if those device pools are broken down by locations and giving you that location information, what I'm going to get here is a list of all of my locations. And I'm going to be able to show you how much utilization each one of those is utilizing. Now, main being my main one here and my only one, I've got 14. Well, if I had 5, 10, 15, 20, 30 different device pools, and I could see that, hey, this one uses the most channels, well, maybe it's great. I can get these guys their own PRI and maybe free up somewhere else that's very, coming close to peaking out on a particular, PRI or T1 or something of that nature. But the nice thing, and very easily what we've done, is we've taken a report that gives you a very high-level overview of how your gateways are being utilized, but we've also broken that down to how each one of your locations is utilizing those. So we'll go and continue down and graph that information because we chose to turn on graphing. And we're also going to go ahead and give you a breakdown for each one of your device pools, how much they're actually utilizing that activity. So I could see from my main device pool, 33% of the time, I really don't have any calls going on during my business hours. And then I'll continue to go down where I can see about 11% of the time I have 4 channels going on at every given time. So this is a great way to be able to get a very high-level overview of how your gateways are being utilized, but also break that down to who's actually having the most utilization and who's taking up the most channels on those PRIs, those T1s, or those SIP pipes. So that's just kind of one example of being able to go ahead and help with being able to migrate environments, but also be able to see how that information is being utilized throughout your environment. Now, that's just kind of the tip of the iceberg when we're talking about utilization. So with here, I focused a lot on gateways, but we can actually take this well out of gateways. So another example, and this is great because this is a live example I worked on with a customer. So we're going to go ahead and move completely away from gateways and gateway utilization and devices and locations, and we're going to focus in on operators. How often are my operators busy? So what this customer came to us for, and they said, you know what, I don't have these guys in any type of call center. They're not associated to hunt groups, but I've got some calls that come in. People go to Unity, they hit 0 to go to the operator, and it routes to these 5 extensions. I need to know when all these people are on the phone at the same time, because if I start hitting a threshold where 50% of my 5 operators are on the phone at the same time, I need to go ahead and staff up. So what I'm going to walk you through right now is a very quick report to be able to monitor either maybe shared line appearances, how often is that shared line being used, or maybe just 5 extensions or 5 different operator extensions. So the first thing we're going to do, we're going to go ahead just like we did before, is we're going to create a report. So I'm going to call this operators report. All right, and the next thing we're going to do is we're going to define our operators. So I can base this off of departments. I could base this off of device pools. I'm really just pulling back any information. And in this case, I'm looking at my operators. So it's important to remove yourself from gateways because my operators also take inbound calls, outbound calls, things of that nature. So what we're going to do for this example is we're just going to go ahead and add extensions. So I'm going to go ahead and choose because I want to know all inbound, outbound. I want to know internal. It doesn't make a difference. I need to see all calls and when these operators are on the phone at the same time. So what we're going to do is we're going to go ahead and add some operator extensions here. So I'm going to do 1707, and we're going to add about 5 operators here. So I'm basically just pulling back my search criteria to say, hey, this is the information I want to pull back. And this is what I want to see. I want to know when these folks are on the phone at the same time and also how often that's occurring. Because when these folks are on the phone at the same time, that means calls aren't getting through. They're going to voicemails. They're not getting through to where they need to be able to be. So as you can see, the first thing I did is I just went through, created a quick search, and I added my 5 operator extensions in here. I don't need to necessarily do any grouping on this one, but I'm going to pop over to my search sets. Maybe I want to see some total count and some average call duration, so I'm just going to leave that on for this particular example. But the next thing I'm going to go ahead and do is just turn on concurrent activity. So a nice thing, again, what Variphy is doing is it's giving you information outside of the PRIs. We're allowing you to really build capacity utilization reports on any filter within your environment, be it operators, device pools, gateways. I actually have a customer that I worked with yesterday where we built a capacity utilization report based on their Meet Me conferences. Now that everybody's working at home, they needed to see what their conference utilization was for Meet Me. So we actually focused in on some codes and built a Meet Me conference call report. I'm going to turn off detail in this case, and we're going to go ahead and give this guy a save, and we're going to give it a quick run just to show you how this guy turns out. There's our operator report. Give this guy a quick run. I'm going to go ahead and keep that same information. We'll keep it in PDF. We're going to do the current and previous week, and I'm just going to go ahead and hit run. So now what that did is it basically went out to my system. I chose to keep counts in here so I could see kind of what my operators are doing. Obviously, nothing going on at 1707. But now what I'm showing you is for the past week and this week, I can see that I peaked at 4 operators. Now, seeing as I got this extension wrong, that's worrisome because I can see that I hit my 4 operators. So for 1 minute and 36 seconds, nobody was able to get through to any of my operators. Now, your environment's different. Maybe that rolls to a general voicemail box. Maybe it rolls to another hunt group or something of that nature. But the point of this report is just to see how often that's taken place. So what I'm doing is I can see my 4 operators. I can see how long. And on average, I have less than 1 operator on the phone at the same time. And then I'm going to go ahead and on that same thing, we're going to break down those time windows. I can see that, you know, at 74% of the time, my operators are doing nothing. Now, this is a very slow environment. This is a demo system. When your operators are on the phone, especially nowadays, a lot of people are calling. A lot of people work with in the medical industry are getting flooded with calls. So a report like this is extremely important to know how often we're not able to manage those calls and they're rolling down to secondary groups or rolling into a Unity system. I can see that 21% of the time I just have a single operator on, and about 4% of the time I have 2 calls going on at once, and I've always got 2 additional operators available. Nice thing about this is this says, hey, you know what? I'm not doing too bad. About 1 minute out of the past 2 weeks, I had 4 people busy. It means I probably have some room for lunches and things of that nature. But the idea behind this report for this particular customer was exactly this. They needed to know how often this is occurring. So these percentages over a week, over a month, gave them a very clear view of how often they have their operators on the phone. Now, for this customer, the report was great. They were running that on a monthly basis, but they also wanted to see this on a regular basis. So we just created a quick widget for them, and I'm going to go ahead and pop over to our dashboard. We're going to build a widget based off of this same information that gave them near real-time information as to how often their operators were on the phone at the same time. So for that, I'm just going to migrate out of reports and go over to dashboards and widgets. From there, we can see we're popping into our capacity widget, or our capacity dashboard here. Perfect place to be able to add this. I'm going to go ahead and just click New Widget, select my widget type, and I'm going to choose Concurrent Call. And I'm going to choose my cluster and just hit Next. So right now, we're just building that operators widget. And we're going to go ahead and keep our refresh interval for 15 minutes. We can go down to 5 minutes. Personally, because of the purpose of this widget, just being able to monitor those operators, I'm going to change my data interval to every 60 minutes. So that means on my graph, it's going to aggregate every 16 minutes. Now, we're going to pop over to our searches. I can do one of two things. I can create a search and just add those 5 extensions in here the same way I did as a report. Or because I already have this report, it's already got all my search information, I can go ahead and just choose that same report. Now what I've done is instead of having to recreate the wheel, add all 5 extensions, I'm just going to say, hey, I've already got that done in the report. Just build this widget off the search criteria I already have in my report. I'm going to update my time period. I can monitor the current day and show, hey, am I hitting that peak today? Or I can do the same thing and monitor the current previous weeks and see how often that is actually occurring. I'm going to keep in mind, I'm going to go ahead and set my date or my time of day. Again, not super important from a widget perspective because I'm not really breaking out percentages. But hey, you know what? Let me go ahead and turn this off and I'll show you what that looks like in the first. So very quickly, what we've done is we've built some reports and we've also built a widget to show my utilization at my gateways, who's utilizing that much information, but also, you know, an operator report, something more business centric. How often are my sales folks on the phone at the same time? How often is this particular business unit on the phone at the same time? And we were able to build that very quickly off an existing report. And I can see throughout the previous 2 weeks that I did peak a couple of times. On the 23rd, I hit 4, and also on the 4th. And I could also see my peaks and valleys based off of time. If I wanted to drill into this information a little bit more, I can edit this information down and say, you know what, maybe we'll aggregate this every 10 minutes. You're going to see that expand a little bit. And now I can see, hey, you know, during this 10-minute period between 8:30 and 8:39, that's when I peaked at 4 calls. I could always drill into this information a little bit more, make it a little bit more visual by excluding certain things within the widgets as well. And now I can go ahead and see my peak. So very quickly, we were able to build capacity utilization reports to show information at device pools, show information at individual agents, and as well as being able to just see overall general information as to what's happening in my environment and how those are being utilized. Now, keep in mind, for this particular example, we use device pool. Maybe device pool is not a good option for you. I still want to monitor all my gateways, but maybe I want to be able to monitor some specific device pools. Now, as you saw, I don't have a whole lot of device pools, so I'm going to actually pick on a couple departments. So let's say, for example, I have some departments and I want to see capacity utilization at those. All I have to do is go to this report. I can make a copy of it. I could switch it around, and I can say, hey, show me my originating or terminating CUCM departments. And then what I can do is I can actually pick and choose which departments I want to be able to see. So from the perspective of being able to fine-tune a report, you can go ahead and do that by adding grouping searches. So for this particular case, I'm going to pick on a couple departments here. I'm going to pick on my rentals department. I'm going to pick on my owner's services department. Let's see. And I've got one more department that I know is pretty heavy in our demo system here. So I'm going to add that. And we're going to just generate this report real quick and just kind of show you an example of other things that you're able to do by utilizing searches and be able to show, you know, valid current information. So let me save this guy. And let's go ahead and give it a run and kind of show you what those results look like. Should run pretty quick here. And what this guy is going to then do is it's going to give us that same utilization we saw before, showing us how much our gateways are utilizing that, but then it's also going to go ahead and allow us to pinpoint specific departments. So I can see out of all my utilization, my rentals department is utilizing the most channels on my gateways, or my owner services, or my maintenance is using. But what I'm doing here is giving you pinpoint finite information based off of just very simple searches of information that's already in your call manager that we're pulling back. Again, keep in mind with Variphy, none of this information is being put into Variphy other than the CDR. We're generating these departments. We're pulling these device pool information based off your call manager. So I appreciate everybody's attendance today. And again, if you haven't had a chance to take a look at our other webinar regarding just building general capacity utilization reports, I urge you to navigate over to Variphy.com and just pop over to our webinar section. From there, you can register for any upcoming webinars. We're getting ready to, we just recently released our version 12.1.3. So that just came out this week. So next week, I hope to see everybody on there. We're going to talk a little bit more about what got released in our 12.1.3. So I appreciate everybody's time today. And Dan, I'm going to go ahead and pass the ball back over to you.
Awesome. Thanks, Vic. Great job as always.
Yes,
So next, we're going to be opening up for a period for question and answers. So if anybody does have any questions, go ahead and type those down below in your Q&A panel. We've got a couple that have come through within the past couple minutes here. So the first question comes from a Sam. Sam wants to know, can I get capacity stats based on physical gateways with multiple interfaces? So Sam, yes, with the originating or terminating device name, a lot of times what CDR will show is that your gateway endpoint, so as defined in Call Manager, you have your endpoints typically defined by the S0/SU and then a long string afterwards, FQDN of that interface. If on specific types of gateways, that is what will show up as the device name. So in Variphy, what you can actually do is under your CDR device list, you can actually group those devices. So you can either build out a widget or report as Vic showed and indicate each of those devices individually, or you could just compound them into a single grouping called what we call CDR list. And then we have the CDR list search option. So instead of in a report inputting every single endpoint name of that physical gateway, you could just create a device list. That's saved globally in the application. So when you're searching for it, you could just make your device list, call it your Phoenix gateway, let's say, and that Phoenix gateway has 4 PRIs on it. That basically compounds those 4 individual endpoint device names as a Phoenix gateway, and so it's searching for all 4 simultaneously. So hopefully that answers your question, Sam. Another question just coming in from Megan. Megan asks, what kind of relevant info can I gain by searching for my queued up hunt groups? So Megan, I think you're referring to the native call queuing feature with hunt groups. So as Victor kind of illustrated, right, these capacity utilization statistics aren't solely based on device usage. So what we can do is we can actually expand that out and pinpoint and filter on specifically for your parking lot devices. So in a queued up call, typically you would see the hunt pilot as the dial number, but as the final call party number, you would see a random string. It's always beginning with a C00. That's going to be your parking lot device. Okay, so what we would then do essentially is find all your calls that have been parked or in queue, and then we could then theoretically see, what is your peak usage, or how many instances do we see people piling up in queue, and what is it at the highest time rate. So that is another great use case for the capacity utilization, is if you're not using UCCX, but you're maybe doing some special call routing with native call queues, we could use this capacity utilization specifically for that and get CCX-like metrics saying, well, when is my peak occurrence taking place? And if it's between 12 and 12:30, let's say, I've got 14 people waiting in queue during this time. That's all specific to your search criteria to the parking lot device. So yeah, definitely could be used for that, Megan. All right. Any other questions? New question. Jack wants to know, does this data get derived direct from our gateway? So Jack, no, it does not. This is all CDR based. So as the CDR gets sent over to us from Call Manager, it's specifying the device names used, right? Originating or terminating device name. Our filtering capabilities or our query to the database is specifically looking at those device names, or as Victor showed, right? We could further investigate that device name information by other terms like people or departments or device pools, right? All of those give us extra capabilities. But yeah, no, we're not talking directly to the gateway. This is all from CD Call Manager. All right. Any other questions from any of the attendees on today's meeting? All right. That is all the questions, Phil, that we're getting for now.
Thanks, Dan. Thanks, Vic. All right, the moment we've all been waiting for. The winner of our $50 Amazon gift card is Blake Stockslager. Congrats, Blake. You have won a $50 Amazon gift card. We'll reach out directly after the call here to get your information. Thanks again for attending the webinar. We hope you are all well and safe. Wanted to remind you to register for upcoming webinars. Next week, we're going to cover what's new in our latest version. And also, if there's any other features you might be interested in outside of CDR, please sign up for a free trial and we'll get you going on an eval. So again, stay well and thank you for joining us today.
Thank you, everybody. Bye-bye.